Hey, a lot of hot races coming up in November, and I know we can't get all of them, but there are some key races that I did want to talk about, and I'm going to talk about them with Sarah Field. Sarah is the Chief Operating Officer at Liberty Central. Sarah, how are you?
I'm doing well, Phil. How are you doing?
Doing very well. So if you were to rank these, let's talk about some of the really top races, the hot races out there. What are we looking for?
Well, Liberty Central just came out with its latest list of the hot races where grassroots activists can really make the most difference. And it was hard to rank them, but we came out with 78 races.
78?
78, exactly. What's great about this election is that you can't limit it to like top 10 lists. I mean, there are so many races. And these are races where, sort of the political class may say that it's sort of up in the air, but we know that with the work of conservatives on the ground, we can get that more constitutional Congress.
Well, I heard Dick Morris, I believe today, saying he's expanded his list, saying that the Republicans may take 60 House seats. And so are you that optimistic?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't like to make any predictions because anything can happen, but I certainly think that if folks focus on these races and focus on others, I think we can get to that more constitutional Congress.
Well, let's talk about some of these races. What are the ones you're really watching?
Well, there are quite a few House races, obviously. I think one of the areas where people can really focus are on some of the Senate races. And there's some exciting primaries coming up actually next week in both Delaware and New Hampshire. You sort of have establishment Republicans versus sort of the grassroots Tea Party candidates, and so those are exciting races for people to watch. Even in Tennessee, Tennessee 4, a House district, is something that we've identified as being really a key race for people to focus on, many of your listeners. And so there are quite frankly too many to list, but I would encourage folks to go to libertycentral.org and look at the list of 78 races.
Well, let's talk about the Delaware race. You're talking about the Mike Castle race, right?
Yes, correct.
Now, this guy has been a rhino for many years, and he's got now a formidable opponent in this primary. What are her chances of pulling this thing off?
Well, I guess the question to ask are what were Joe Miller's chances? It's hard to predict these things. To call Mike Castle a rhino, I think, is actually generous. We did a scorecard at Liberty Central, and it's great. We went through every member of Congress and ranked them on 15 pieces of legislation, not just the easy ones, but really, things that showed their philosophy. And Mike Castle, I think, got a C or a D. I mean, he was by far the lowest-ranking Republican. I mean, many Democrats scored higher than him. So he is by means no conservative. Yeah,
no kidding. So you think that's a winnable race then, huh?
I think so. I mean, you see folks all across Delaware just getting so excited about Christine O'Donnell and about the chance to impact Congress, and so it's exciting.
Now, one of the races in California is the 47th Congressional District with Loretta Sanchez, who's the Democrat, and Van Tran is the Republican. Any chance that Van Tran's going to take that seat?
Again, I'm really cautiously optimistic about this. Folks are really just excited in that district. They're rising up. Sanchez is quite unpopular. So but that's why we put it on this list. Again, it's not an easy race, but it's a race that with focus from folks on the ground and across the country can be an easy race.
Now, Star Parker, who has become a star in her own right, as far as she used to be on welfare, she's a conservative, a Republican. She's running in the 37th Congressional District in California against Laura Richardson, who's the Democrat. And so she's got a lot of name recognition. That should help her, shouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Star Parker is just remarkable, and she's a wonderful speaker, and she has a wonderful personal story. And certainly things like name recognition absolutely help. I mean, and so that's why you see a race like California 37 coming on this list, something people probably never thought would go to a conservative. But with all the exposure that conservative ideas are getting right now, it's really quite possible.
Now, some other ones I'm looking at down your list here. And what's your website, by the way, where people can go there and check it out?
Sure, it's libertycentral.org.
Okay, libertycentral.org. Betsy Markey, and no relation to Ed Markey, but not that I'm aware of. She's in the 4th Congressional District in California. She's taken on Cory Gardner, who's the Republican. And again, this is a high-profile seat. A lot of people know about Betsy Markey. And my understanding is that the Democrats are doing some triage, and they're saying that seat may be lost.
Yeah, they're pretty nervous about this seat. And again, we're a nonpartisan organization, so we aren't sort of looking at it as whether the Democrat's going to lose the seat, but looking at it as whether a conservative can really gain the seat.
Right.
And they are doing triage. And Betsy Markey actually received an F on the Liberty Central scorecard. Again, clear indicator, I know, that she does not represent her district.
Ike Skelton's another one. This is the Missouri 4th Congressional District, taking on Vicky Hartzler, I guess, is the Republican. And Ike Skelton, another high-profile Democrat out there who has a chance of getting beat.
Yes, and you also have another race in Missouri 3 against Russ Carnahan.
Right, that's another big one.
Exactly, huge state. And Missouri, of course, is a big bellwether state, much like Ohio is and Pennsylvania perhaps used to be. And so these are races where the conservatives really have a great opportunity.
Now, tell me about this one with Carolyn McCarthy. She's another high-profile Democrat in the 4th Congressional District in New York. And this is a two-way Republican primary, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and New York is always funny because you have, you sort of have different factions of the party, and then you have the conservative party. But the primary is coming up in New York, and McCarthy also received a very low grade on the Liberty Central scorecard, an F. And so, again, in a place like New York where perhaps you thought there wasn't that much opportunity, well, you have folks on Long Island now who are saying, wait a minute, I want to halt this Obama agenda. And so there's a real opportunity even there.
And somebody who's been at the head of that Obama agenda and has been in recent hot water because of tax problems, our old pal Charlie Rangel. And Charlie Rangel over in the 15th Congressional District needs up against a two-way Republican primary, and that's coming up, of course, in New York. So he has a chance, you're thinking, of maybe going down with the wicked, huh?
Well, this one might be sort of a harder climb than others, but again, I don't think that anything is impossible. And what is so great about the YouTube information age that we're in is that new races can pop up all the time. You really have a chance of seeing what these incumbents are all about. And so, Michael Faulkner is the conservative running against Charlie Rangel. He's a pastor, I believe, in New York, and just a really remarkable person. And he's been doing a great strategy of walking around in the community, talking to people, explaining his ideas of limited government. And so, again, nothing's impossible.
Nothing. Well, look, and I know you don't want to make predictions, but it's looking like the Republicans are going to take the House. Are you willing to go out on a limb and say that's probably going to be the case?
Again, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Oh, come on, Sarah.
I know. But I think that's probably the case.
Okay. How about the Senate, though? Because there have been pundits like Dick Morris, again, we're talking about. Dick Morris seems to think that the Republicans are going to take the Senate. I think that's a possibility, but that's going to be a stretch, though, isn't it?
Well, I think yes and no. I mean, you do have a lot of conservative candidates running for Senate seats, and in a lot of instances, you actually have retiring Republicans who again probably weren't very conservative, and there are more conservative folks coming up to run in their place. So you look at a state like New Hampshire, where even if you don't necessarily have, from a partisan perspective, a gain in a seat, you would have a wonderful gain from a conservative perspective if somebody like Ovid LaMontagne actually won the primary and was able to win the general. So the Senate is looking good for conservatives as well.
How about Harry Reid's seat?
Oh, well, I think that's absolutely a possibility.
That would be absolutely amazing. I mean, not only would, if they lost control of the Senate, but even if they didn't lose control of the Senate, but for Harry Reid to have to come back and be in the minority or not come back at all, it would just be unbelievable. Either way, I mean, if the Republicans win the majority and Harry Reid, I guess probably you couldn't do it without beating Harry Reid. They couldn't win the majority in the Senate. But this guy may not be back at all. Here is the majority leader of the Senate right now who possibly will not even be back regardless of who's in power.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, and I'm sure your listeners don't need to know but he did get an F on our scorecard as well.
Really?
I know,
Harry?
Oh. But it's again, this is an exciting time, and Sharon Engel is tapping into something in that state. I mean, Nevada is certainly a conservative state. People are distrustful of Washington, and they are pro-Second Amendment, and it's. You see somebody like Harry Reid, and you know that he does not represent his district. And unfortunately, those things are going to be held to account now. Or fortunately, depending on who you are.
Yeah, fortunately, certainly.
Exactly.
I hope that's the case. Well, it's Sarah Field, the Chief Operating Officer with Liberty Central. You can go to libertycentral.org and find out about all these races. And good gracious, I mean, it's turning into a Democrat nightmare, it looks like, unless something drastically changes in the next 2 months. But we appreciate your insight on it, Sarah.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.